Well, thank you for that really warm introduction. I'm Sophia, and my project was Sophia Through Glass. So, Robert Scoble said, no product has ever been craved or vilified so long before it was available, and he was completely spot on with this quote. In March 2013, Google Glass was released to 8,000 different people. And then in November, these 8,000 people were able to give their invitation to 3 others, friends and family. And so with this increase of people with Google Glass, and I was fortunate to be one of them, there was also this huge amount of negative buzz in the United States. But this negative buzz actually created this like intense curiosity internationally. So I started questioning, well, if people internationally are really curious because they've never seen it before, how would people react if they were able to see it in person? So then I met Kat and the wonderful people at the 3% conference, and they made this dream a reality. So in about 2 short weeks, I assembled my trip, and I was going to Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, London, Berlin, Dubai, Mumbai, and Goa in a short span of 5 weeks to document how people would react to this new technology. So in my first 2 cities, Madrid and Barcelona, people didn't actually call it Google Glass, which I found fascinating. It was gafas de Google, which in Spanish means Google Glass, but still is interesting. And people had never seen it before, except on the TV. Some people had seen the king wearing it in this press conference. They were like, oh, I thought this was only for royal people. What are you doing with it? And I kept wearing it around the streets, and people wouldn't come up to me. So I thought that people, like in New York, people would be like, why are you wearing that? And like, what are you doing? Like, do you work for Google? But here, no one was coming up to me, so I had to kind of provoke the situation, which was way different than I anticipated. And when I did talk to people, they were like, wow, you're so cool. Like, you look so modern. I love it. Google Glass style is amazing. And I was like, wow, that's so different. It's not at all what happened in the United States. So that was really interesting. Here is a group of students looking at me really weirdly. They were like, are you taking a picture of me right now? I'm so confused. Love this picture. Then I went to Paris, and I actually went to an event where I was demoing Google Glass for about 100 people and like letting them try it on. And they kept saying, this is $1,500 and it doesn't understand my accent or speak French. Like, what? Like, I don't get it. Why would people pay for this? So what I learned in Paris is that like if you're going to do any sort of technology, make sure that it's functional, and not, the fashion part doesn't really matter that much, interestingly enough. So this is a woman.
Okay, so how did you like glass?
Oh my god, it's amazing.
It's amazing?
Yeah.
You love it?
That's crazy.
Okay. Cool. So in London, yeah, no one gives a shit about Google Glass. In fact, they actually didn't even care about the technology. They were like, no, but Google has all the rights to your information, and like, why would you share that much, and what does it mean? And it was just, I literally felt like I was like an anti-privacy person instead of a Google Glass explorer in London, and just like was constantly defending Google, and I was like, I don't even work for them. But so yeah, and what I learned was if you're doing any sort of wearable technology, make sure, or any technology in general, make sure that you're explaining to them how you're using your data and why you're using it, and like be very explicit in that defense. And this is a short video of this guy.
Exactly. Oh, dang! That's sick. Yeah.
Yeah, so Berlin was actually one of the most fascinating because I didn't really know the history of Berlin that well, and so it made sense. It was unlike London in the sense that they have so much just dark history of getting their privacy taken away from them. So in an interview, actually, this one man said, we know the pain of not having privacy, therefore we will do whatever to keep it. And so that was really interesting to me because it really showed that, wow, people here don't want to just like publicize their lives because they know what it's like to have it stripped away from them, which I thought was very unique. And so I felt like I constantly had my head down wearing Google Glass around and felt really bad when people would be like, why are you wearing that? But I still wore it. Dubai was completely opposite of Berlin, and it's a city, like the most fabricated city I've ever been to. People there were like, oh my god, it takes pictures? Like that's all I want to do anyways, so this is great. And every time I tried to demo it, they were just like not interested in like Googling or anything. They were just like, oh, photo. I was like, yeah. So yeah, and the $1,500 price point, like no big deal. They have lots of money, and everyone was like, oh, I can buy that. I was like, okay. This is a guy, I was like looking for a scarf, and connected to my phone.
Look, so this is like internet.
So this is like internet.
No.
And then Mumbai and Goa was actually the most inspiring place I've been to. People there are confronted with so many problems on a day-to-day basis, and so we'll look to any sort of technology that can improve their lives as just this huge opportunity. So yeah, they weren't even talking about privacy. They were like, let's talk about the potential. Two examples I really remember is one man said, we can use this to do-it-yourself projects, and like this would make assembly line processes so much faster. Another guy was talking about how if he could walk around his small town, like outside of Mumbai, then like Google Maps would actually be able to use image data to like place where he is and where his family is because they don't have addresses. So they say like, I'm next to the gas station by the red house, 2 doors down from the blue door. And like with Google Glass, we can map that out. That was really interesting. And so yeah, want to test out anything, I would say go to India. People there are like really smart and really eager to just do anything with new technology. Obviously, getting the price down is the biggest factor in this, but if you want people to be excited and build, then go to India. So I went to this music festival and took a picture from the like DJ booth, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so this was said by a Silicon Valley investor. Glass will be a fluke because nobody wants that shit on their face. And actually, glass won't be a fluke because nobody wants it on their face. That's actually not true. A lot of people do outside of the United States. It will fail because Google won't get the price down in enough time, in the shortest amount of time. And so if you get the price down, like Google would do way better internationally. And at the end of the day, and I always tell this to people, like Google Glass is not meant to replace our phones right now. This is like the Palm Pilot, or I was told there's something before the Palm Pilot, but I, yesterday. So it was that thing before the Palm Pilot. And it's, what was it? The Newton, there we go. Rebecca told me this. Yeah, so it was the Newton. And yeah, so it'll fail because of that, not because nobody wants it on their face. And yeah, not true. Anyways. And yeah, so this is speaking to that point, like this is what we look like in 2014, 2013, and like this is very broken. We're experiencing things through a screen, and so like in the future, things will look like this, and even though it probably won't be glass, it'll be something else, and instead of resisting it, it's just better to like be a part of the future and influencing the next, I don't know, 10, 20 years of our lives. And with that, I am going to show you my video that I made at the end of my trip. Oh wait, I think you have to rewind it. It's okay. Okay, now it's recording a video.
Wait, now yo,
Really?
she's what?
Yeah.
Like,
Fuck that.
I know you feel crazy as well because you know this, like no one can see it. Hey, what you doing?
Okay, glass.
Pero faltan los vídeos, ¿no?
And you can see it here.
Oh, you got to send video?
Because yeah.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
It's amazing. You love it? When you first saw me wearing it, what did you think?
Are you Googling us now? No, it's recording you. Huh, that's cool. And have a look over here. Crazy.
And how do
Okay, so you do OK Glass, Google. I'm recording a video.
Yeah?
Yeah. See?
Very nice.
Yeah.
So that was my trip with Google Glass. So thank you to the 3% Conference. It's been amazing and has forever changed my life. Thank you.
Is my mic ready to go? Can everybody hear me okay? All right, cool. Thank you, Sophia. I'd like to thank Kat and Eleven for having me here as well. And ironically, as Sophia kind of championed new technology in new cultures, I'm here to talk about how to adopt existing technology in a healthy way in our culture. But before I get too far along, and before I introduce myself, I want to introduce my favorite accessory. This is the iPhone 6. I couldn't get the 6 Plus because it wouldn't fit in my hipster jeans, but it's literally the leading, micro technology computer out there today. It's got an A8 chip. It's got 326 pixels per inch and an 8 megapixel camera on it. And it's supposed to be, the most liberating, freeing device out there. Yet, ironically, the more I used it, the more enslaved and tethered I felt to that phosphorescent glow. And I was always tied to a wall because I was charging it because I was using my phone so much. So, yeah. So I'm Jeremy Vandehey, and I'm a recovering nomophobe, which is a real term if you didn't know. It means no mobile phone phobia. It's a phobia people feel when they don't actually have their phones on them or they're dead or whatever. So I'm here to tell you about how I hit rock bottom. Yeah, and ironically, I was climbing a mountain when I hit rock bottom. I was with my girlfriend, who I think is here today. But we were climbing Tikal, a Mayan ruin, and to catch the sunrise. And we made it just in time. I snapped like 100 pictures and felt pretty content with that experience. Sorry, I'm standing in front of you guys here. And then on my hike down, I was reflecting on the beautiful thing I just saw, and my mind went blank. I just couldn't even remember what the sunset looked like until I pulled out my phone. And realized I had experienced that sunrise through my phone, which is pretty sad and depressing. And so on the hike down, I continued to kind of reflect on how else new technology and mobile phones specifically have impacted my life. And I came up with a few, and I think if you guys reflect, you'll notice a few of these in your own life as well. I felt just overall disengaged from real life, and this is an iPad format, so there's a little irony there. But when I would go out to eat with my friends or even my family, I felt the need to pull out my phone, or if I wasn't on my phone, I wanted to pull it out. And instead of engaging with people in real life, I was wondering what was happening on Twitter or Facebook, which is pretty depressing. I lived a less active lifestyle, so I live in San Francisco. It's one of the most walkable cities in the US, yet I found myself Ubering or Lyfting everywhere just because it was so convenient and one tap away. So, you know, I felt like I always was on a date with Siri because if there was, you know, a fact that I couldn't think of, or, you know, I couldn't think of a song, you know, Siri would be the first instinct versus actually trying to use my memory and my critical thinking and recall. So, always on. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to this in the professional world. You know, when you have an email inbox, a messaging system, a social network, all in your pocket, all at once, it can feel very difficult to just turn off and reflect and have your own thoughts to yourself. So, a slippery schedule. So this is an interesting one. You know, back, I'm going to say in the old days, I grew up in the early 90s, so I guess, you know, hopefully not too long ago, but when you wanted to meet up with a friend and you were going to like ride your bike and meet him in 30 minutes, if you missed that 30-minute window, he was gone and gone forever. But now, it's or at least for the afternoon, hopefully. But now, you know, it's so easy and I'm often late. I'm sorry, Molly, if you're in the audience, I know I'm always late. But you can just update that person and say, hey, I'm going to be 15, 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late. And that can happen, you know, over the course of the day. You're just pushing everybody's schedules back and not respecting their time. So I'm trying to be really cognizant of that now. And the last but not least is always feeling the need to be entertained. You know, there's so many great apps on our phones that they're so great at fighting boredom. But if you really reflect on everyday life, whether you're on the bus or, you know, walking to work, it's all pretty boring, you know, to say the least. And if you train yourself where you're always needing to be entertained, that means you're always looking at your phone, and that's a pretty dangerous scenario to be in. So I realized that, you know, after doing a little bit of research, it wasn't just me. You know, I wasn't the only person experiencing this addiction, and there's actually a lot of people out there like me who, I don't want to advance this too far. 58% of the people in this room can't go 1 hour without checking their phone. And 30% spend more than 5 minutes on their phone while they're at a meal with another person. So that's me looking directly at my phone for 5 minutes out of a 30 or 45-minute meal, which it's pretty embarrassing. Toilet tapping, 75% use their phone while on the toilet or in the bathroom. So you want to talk about decreased productivity during the workday? Toilet tapping is to blame. 15% have checked their phone while having sex with another person. So I never fell into that category, luckily. But yeah, it's a pretty scary fact. And in general, on average, we spend 158 minutes on our phone in contrast to the 47 or 48 minutes that we're spending with our children or our loved ones. And that's face-to-face interaction, not on another screen, actually engaging with that person. So pretty overwhelming statistics, and I think it's a trend that's on the rise. So, and the irony of this whole thing is, you know, I work on mobile apps, and I love mobile technologies. You know, I'm in product, I'm in design, I do code a little bit, and here are some of the apps that I've worked on over the last couple of years. So, you know, I think it's interesting to come at it from a developer perspective versus, and also, you know, feeling the pain of a consumer who's always tethered to his device. And the truth is, you know, as a developer, we want to create value for you guys. These are, you know, two of the apps that I've worked on. The first is Weave. It's a small business application to help them manage their to-dos and their finances. The second was Redbox Instant, where you could stream movies and reserve DVDs from their kiosks. And for Weave, you know, we wanted to help you save time. That was our goal. For Redbox Instant, we wanted to help you waste time. Like, if you had a down minute, you could watch a movie. And for Weave, getting in and out quickly was important. For Redbox Instant, we wanted you to stay a while. But for both of these applications, you know, the goal was to build something that, you know, supplied value to you guys as consumers, and you would repeatedly use and come back. And, you know, we as developers, we're basically fighting for your attention. Google and Apple, they've built these competitive app store marketplaces where we're pitted against each other to try and get 5 more minutes of your time away from another app or away from another meaningful conversation. So we're all trying to get to, you know, the home screen, or where I call the beachfront property. So, and yeah, I don't think that makes me a bad person. Hopefully you guys don't think I'm a bad person, because I want you to love the applications that I build or that we build as a developer community. We're trying to, and these are a few of my favorite apps across the categories, but these are the big buckets I see them falling into is, making you more effective, building lasting relationships with people around you, and, making life less boring when it's appropriate. And like I said, so our goal is, once you tap, you just can't stop. I stole the Pringles slogan there, but we're trying to make these things addicting. And now I'm going to go through, briefly how developers, the tactics that we use to make them addicting, with a few examples. So onboarding and FUE, which is short for first user experience. This is a tactic that, Twitter's, really, really good at. What they do is they find the perfect mix of getting you to follow somebody versus engaging with their platform. And you're basically opting in the first time you use their application to say, whenever New York Times posts something new, that's going to drive you back and re-engage you into the application. So they've built in those hooks on the very first experience. Push notifications is an obvious one. The app there is Peak. I use it. It's a brain training game. And what they do is really smart. They actually ask you when you would like to receive push notifications as a reminder to complete your brain training for the day. So not only have you opted in, you've told them the perfect time when you're most susceptible to receiving that notification and actually opening it up and getting you back. Game dynamics, so if you haven't played Two Dots, I'd recommend you download it. Hopefully not now, but it's a pretty simple game where you just connect dots of different colors, and they do some really smart things where if you die, you run out of lives, and you can either buy a life for 99 cents, which is convenient, or you can wait, and they'll regenerate every 20 minutes. So I've never sunk so low where I had to buy them. I do suck at the game. I just wait it out, and I find myself waiting for that notification every 20, 40, 60 minutes that says, hey, you have a new life. Come play Two Dots and avoid running your dog or something. Social hooks, so this is a kind of an obvious one, but I wanted to think of an example in a non-social setting. So this app is Wunderlist. I use that in my personal to-do, as my personal to-do list manager. And what they've done is super interesting. So they've built in the functionality to invite other people to your projects and your to-dos. So even if you kind of fall off the wagon and stop using that as a to-do management system, if other people continue to do that in your circle, they'll pull you back in, and you're just right where you started using their application again. And last but not least is app updates. So we as developers use these creatively to get you back. We're always trying to build new and interesting functionality that you'll love and want to come back to. And we have a variety of channels. It's email, it's push notifications, it's just the app updating on your home screen will be enough to bring you back and see what's new. So. And so after all of doing all this reflection and noting how much developers are trying to get me to engage and be on my phone all the time, I decided to make a change. And what I did was I came up with this, I'm coining it the mobile cleanse, if you will, where I made a serious commitment to not feeling so enslaved to my phone. And there's 6 steps if you guys want to follow along. The first is keeping it in your pants. So you noticed it's not appropriate to whip out my phone or many other things when I'm on stage in front of a bunch of people. So that's a good rule. If you're with other people and it's not furthering the conversation that you're having, leave it in your pants. Using your brain and not Siri. So I use this example. My brother and I used to fight about football stats all the time when we were little kids, and it wasn't who was right. It was just the fact that we were having that conversation. And the other week, before I kicked off this cleanse, we were having a similar fight about the Green Bay Packers, which we always do. And the conversation stopped after 2 minutes because I was able to answer the question with Siri instead of just debating and building that relationship with him. So this is the third step, is hide and delete. And you can see the before and after of what my home screen looks like. It was kind of a cluttered mess with notifications and badges whizzing everywhere. But now, it's very clean. I turned off all of the push notifications. I turned off all of the badges. So I just don't have that incentive to, or curiosity to say, oh, hey, what's the latest 1,000th email that I've received or whatever. Never push, so never push notification, always pull. Like I said, turning off those notifications can be just incredibly efficient at, stopping those random app usage sessions that you wouldn't otherwise use if you really needed it. So turning off all of the essential notifications is going to just cut down immensely on your mobile abuse. Wear a dumb watch. So I have one right now. Not a smartwatch, because that's just the same problem, just a different channel. And you'd be amazed at how many, I do this all the time. I pull up my phone and I want to check what time it is, and then 5 minutes later I find myself tweeting or Facebooking or something like that. So you can wear a watch, avoid that temptation, and you can try to look like James Bond. At least I did, and failed miserably. So last but not least, no phones in the bedroom or the bathroom. So this is a tough one, especially since I used mine as an alarm clock, but it's very important. It's the place where you spend, the most amount of time per day, especially with the people, or the person that you care about the most. So you lose so much intimacy if you're both just staring at a phosphorescent screen for 30 minutes before you go to sleep. And this is an anecdotal graph of evidence that I found. This isn't my life, but if you prevent from using your phone in the bathroom, you'll be more effective. I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah. So it's a two-way street. I mean, as developers in the developer community, if you're a developer out there, I push you to be respectful of these things and how human interact with mobile phones, just respecting their privacy, building honorably and transparently. But at the end of the day, as a consumer, you have to remember that it's how we make a living. We want to build things you love and things that you use all day, every day, but it has its breaking point. It's no different than an email marketer who sends you 5 emails in a week versus us trying to get you to use our apps all day, every day. There's always a person on the other end of that making a living off of your conversion or your app usage. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's up to you, it's up to us, all of us, to use technology responsibly. And I hope the cleanse is helpful, and you guys can maybe take on a few steps. And I'll summarize with, these phones are incredible devices, and they've allowed me and all of us to do things that we could never do in the past, but I think we're on them too much, and I think we should just be a little bit more human. So good luck. Yeah, and I will say, if you want to engage or have other ideas for the cleanse, tweet at me with #MobileCleanse. Check out the site. Or a project of mine I've been working on is for anonymous professional feedback. I'd love for you guys to tell me what you think of the cleanse on there as well at bit.ly/JV3%. So thanks for your time.
That's how I roll. Okay, that's awkward. I'm going to start at the end. You each and all of you and all of us can change the world now. For generations. Now. If we decide to. So, that's the conclusion. I'm going to talk a little bit about an old technology problem with very real-world implications. It's Photoshop. And I have spent most of my last 3 years trying to address the problems, and with apologies to my friends at Adobe, this is not in fact about Photoshop, it's about digital manipulation. Please do not sue me. But the very real problems caused by this. What we are in the midst of, and what we have to recognize, is that the digital manipulation, post-production of people in advertising, turning them into someone they are not and never can be without the help of this technology, is causing and contributing, not alone, but it is a part of the cause and contribution to what I think is arguably the biggest public health crisis affecting this country, disproportionately children, adolescent girls, and boys. This is not limited to women. This is not limited to girls, though it affects us, you, disproportionately in women. Personal aside, actually this is going to get very personal. My son, who just turned 8, was sitting on the couch the other day, and he said to me, "Daddy," my son's a big boy, he says to me, "Daddy, I wish I was skinny like Elsa." I was like, boo, if Elsa could stand up, her eyes would knock her over. But our children do not have the ability to process fantasy. They do not have the ability to distinguish that which is not real from that which might be. And I like fantasy. I like escape. As I'll tell you in a moment, I've spent most of my career in Hollywood. Even under the right circumstances, I like hallucinations. But when we cannot tell the difference, we are fucking people up. And as I said a minute ago, you can change it now. You can be the difference. You can be the change. So this is a story in 2 parts, and I have borrowed from the theme of the conference. It is a story about inspiration, and it is a story about activation. And just for a moment, the idea here, of course, about inspiration. What is inspiration? Inspiration is something that makes us want to do or be something. Something that makes us want to do or be something, and that is the power of what we all do. In large part, sometimes it's why we do it. I am a father, and I am scared. I am scared because Kat, for whom I am so grateful, has given me a platform, and I am scared that I will waste it. I am scared that I will say the wrong things, or that I will say the right thing in the wrong way, and that you will not hear me and understand your power to make change. I am scared because this moment matters, because what we're teaching our children matters, because I do not parent my kids alone. I parent with all of you. I parent with the people who will win tomorrow at the state and local level. I parent with people I do not like and do not agree with, and that is the job of a parent. But we are all teaching each other and each other's children, and we have to recognize that, and I need your help. I am scared because this is my daughter. She looks a lot like me. Everybody tells us that. I am scared because this is my daughter in a picture taken when she was 2, and 2 weeks ago she turned 9. I am scared because time is moving faster than I had any reason to think it could, and like many parents, we know that days are so long, and yet the years go quickly, and I am losing control over the ability to filter the messages she receives. She inspires me. It took my kid's mother and I a long time to have children. My wife, ex-wife if you must know, like me, is a white Jew from New York. If I went back, you could see she doesn't look much like a white Jew, that child. Our children were adopted. It took us years to get to holding those babies in our arms. Along the way, we thought a lot about what being a parent meant. And what we ultimately boiled it down to, this is not a news flash, but it was kind of weird for me, was our job comes down to how can we help our children be as happy as they're possibly capable of based on their own definitions of happiness, not our definitions of happiness. And she inspired me, and I began to see the world through the eyes of this little girl, and I was horrified by what I saw. I am a white man who has grown up in and around privilege. That was not going to be my daughter's life. I looked at the world through the eyes of a girl, and I saw only the things that could get in the way of her happiness. And I felt compelled to try and do something about it, because if I didn't, I'd never forgive myself. Are you already telling me to rap? All right, all right. So I left my career. I was the chief marketing officer at Live Nation. I started the marketing group at CAA. I've done the work you guys have done. But I knew that if I didn't do this, I'd never forgive myself. And then 3 years ago, there was an article out of the UK about this ad that was taken down by the British government because they said this ad with Julia was so overly photoshopped, so manipulated, that it provided a false and unrealistic expectation of what women should and could look like, and it was bad and harmful and dangerous, and guess what? It is. Not just in isolation, but as a part of the cumulative effect of everything we see. And I began to think, well, who here from a government and legislative perspective is looking out for my kids the same way? And what I saw was nobody was. So 3 years ago, I wrote an article in the Huffington Post called, "Is Popular Culture the Biggest Bully of All?" And the answer is yes, in fact, it is. And I said, we need labeling laws. If you're going to Photoshop, tell us you did it. Because when we confuse an art director's ideal with what's real, again, we get a little bit fucked up. We're like greyhounds chasing after a rabbit that we can never catch. And when we do not catch it, we feel bad. We actually feel self-hate. And I doubt if there's anyone in this room who has not felt less than because of an ad. Or again, I don't want to make this just about, I'm not demonizing advertising, I love it. It's not just about advertising, but we contribute to it. And so that article became a federal bill in April. In the Truth in Advertising Act. Thank you. I like applause a lot, so don't stop with those, but here's the thing. We've accomplished nothing, and that's where you guys come in. A bill is not a law. A bill is not change. Here's the thing. As it says, when the job of altering is done right, we shouldn't even notice the lie. We're lying. We have to stop lying. We here have to stop lying because we inspire my daughter. The work we do, the images, the attitudes, the expectations, they create norms and standards and values, and they inspire my daughter. And that scares me. You heard about it before from Elena and Pamela. To sell more, too often we're defaulting to making people feel less than. It's what Lupita Nyong'o referred to, I think, so beautifully as the seduction of inadequacy. And we are selling the seduction of inadequacy over and over again. And in fact, I took this note during the earlier presentation where one of the video speakers said, a person who isn't happy or secure isn't going to be a very good consumer. And I laughed. And many of you laughed. And here's the problem, it's not funny. It's not funny at all. Because we are creating a culture of unhappiness. And we can change that. We are better than that. Before our congressional briefing in April, my daughter, I was putting her to sleep. She was not quite 9. And apropos to nothing, she said to me, Daddy, do you think I'm ugly? What do you say to your daughter in that moment? Do you tell her that she's the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen? Because she is. Do you tell her that beauty doesn't matter? Do you tell her that ugly is just an attribute? What I babbled. I still don't know what I said. But I know that my daughter is not alone. In fact, to quote Mr. Romney, there are binders full of data drawing the link between the cause and effect relationship here. And I'm going to leave it to you except for to read while I'm babbling and rapping. But the more media girls see, the less options they think they have. And that's evidenced by the fact that 53% of 13-year-old girls don't like something about themselves. 4 years later, it's 78%. By the time they're 25, it'll be 90%. You all, many of you, know this data far better than I do because you have lived it. But on average, the women in this room have 13 thoughts of self-hate a day. It's not all advertising's fault, but we have a role to play. And guess what? We're not the cause. We can be the solution. The AMA in 2011 said to the advertising industry, hey, this is bad. The advertising industry said nothing. In fact, these 4 empty chairs are from our congressional briefing introducing the Truth in Advertising Act in April. NAD was absent, the AAF was absent, 4As was absent, the ASRC was absent. Nancy, I don't know if you're here. Where are you? Right there? What's up, dude? Nancy, and I don't remember your lobbyist name. Him. Said, hey, we have other more pressing industry issues to deal with. They are a lobby group. That's their responsibility. Jim said to me, let me be clear. We will use any and all means necessary to defeat this. That's his job. What will we do? They're not wrong, but they're not changing the status quo. That's their job. What's ours? 20% of all the pictures ever taken in the history of the world have been taken in the last 2 years. We live in a Pinterest world, an Instagram world. We haven't yet mobilely cleansed. We're taking pictures all the time. And so an image is worth more than 1,000 words now because our brains haven't adapted to the influx of information. So that mole or cellulite that was removed, the slimming and the trimming, it leaves an indelible and forever impression. And so the question is, are we responsible for the side effects, not just of what we sell, but how we sell? Because if you can imagine another product that was on the shelf that made 53% of 13-year-old girls feel less than about themselves, that caused some of them not to eat and some of them to throw up after they ate, it would be removed from the shelves immediately. And we're putting some of that out there. So, how is that for inspiration, right? Feel good presentation. What can we do? The thing is, we can do everything right now. That problem goes away, or is at least significantly mitigated right now if any of you decide to do something. And the question is, what difference will it make? It will do no harm. I like to suck up, so I'm quoting Kat. 95% of our industry suffers from bystander syndrome. I'm actually quoting Kat, quoting Cindy. Let's not be bystanders. Here's what I've done. Here's what I've tried to do with the help of many, including 1,000 organizations. Many of our allies are here right now. Activists, advocates. We introduced the Truth in Advertising Act in April. It's a bipartisan congressional bill, not something you hear a lot of, that asks the FTC to bring all of the stakeholders together. It is not a prescriptive bill. It says we have a problem, let's figure out the solution together, which is why we invited you guys to join us. We have to figure out the solution together. Advertising is not bad. Photoshop is not bad. What's happening to our kids is bad. So we're asking them to develop a framework to reduce the health consequences. By photoshopping, make the blue sky bluer, clean up the flyaway hair, take my zit, it does not matter. We're talking about material changes. Changes to shape, size, proportion, color of skin, the enhancement or removal of individual characteristics like cellulite, like wrinkles, like breasts. If you put a six-pack on my body, you're lying. Just saying. 2 months ago, we introduced a self-regulatory path because we don't need regulation if we self-regulate. So we introduced the Truth in Advertising Heroes Pledge, asking advertisers, agencies, and talent, in front of the camera talent, to just do 2 things that can change culture forever. 1, if you're going to Photoshop, tell us you did it. Again, because when we confuse the ideal with what's real, that's where problems happen. This is not necessarily the label, but it's that kind of innocuous thing. It is media literacy. It is also a creative decision. Because you have to choose to make that a part of it. We have to choose creative compromise versus our children, or our children versus that. Second, don't run it in secondhand smoke media, the places where our kids can see it, even if they're not its intended target. Billboards, kiosks, outdoor, etc. Again, it's a creative decision. Will we make it? If you want to change the world, Hugh MacLeod said, that's marketing. That's what we do. We influence attitudes and behaviors. We capture attention. If we want to change the world, that's what we have to do here. We have done it before as an industry. We have turned heavy to thin to heavy, all within the context of creating new ideals. And today we sell perfect as if it's attainable, as if it's meaningful, as if our flaws define us in a negative way rather than add character. And it's in the zeitgeist. We are ready for change. You have heard it over and over again. From Meghan Trainor to Lord to Colby Kayett, over and over and over again. And ModCloth, San Francisco's very own, became the first marketer, the first advertiser to sign our Truth in Advertising Heroes Pledge. And they got 750 million impressions, for whatever that's worth, in about 3 days. Every one of their sales metrics, traffic metrics is up. And they said, we will be a part of the solution. Interestingly, as we've emailed about, it's completely consistent with the 4A's creative code. That's all we're saying. Don't exaggerate visually. Not hard to do if we choose to do it. So how can you help? Please know, there are no silver bullets, there are no panaceas. This just makes things better. It doesn't solve everything. But when we all act individually, even at a micro level, we can change. So, sign the pledge. Tell me the idea sucks. Tell me this is ridiculous. Help me make the execution. Help us make the idea and the execution better. Come up with your own version of it. Please, please, use your talent, your power, your platforms to change the status quo and be a maker. Because that's what our kids need. And while election day is tomorrow, you guys vote every day in your meetings and with your decisions. And I hope it's clear that more than one advertising industry status quo needs changing. This is my daughter today. She has grown up quickly, and she will apparently continue to grow up unless I cryogenically freeze her. And the question that we heard over and over again is, can she be, within this context, what she does not see? The question I want to leave you with is, can she be what she does? And what are the consequences of her not being able to be? I am a father, and I am hopeful that I have alienated few of you, inspired some of you, because you can be the change. Thank you very much.
Hey, y'all. I am not from the South, but I just like saying, hey, y'all. Hey, y'all. I'm so honored to be up here on the stage with these amazing people and surrounded by all of you, and I actually don't have to say anything right now because my topic is designing for emotion, and it's clear how emotion has driven, inspired, and caused these people to spring into action, whether it's the excitement around Google Glass, causing Sophia to touch the lives of so many, or a realization that technology is stealing us away from the human lives we were made to live with Jeremy, or this guy's pure, unadulterated passion for making the world a better place for his kids. So yeah, emotion matters. As a human, I am driven by emotion. As a designer, I'm inspired by emotion. At MadPow, I oversee our health practice. Health is one of my passions. Working in health fortified my understanding that the decisions we make are driven by the emotions we have, that our behavior, that even our health, positively or negatively, is impacted. My personal emotion shaped the course of my career, actually. And I'm going to share a little story with you, too. I believe that design can improve the human condition, that as designers and creatives, we are engaged by our empathy. Our creative makes us want to see harmony in the chaos. We sit with our empathy. It inspires us. We envision a better way, and then we paint a picture for everybody else to see and say, come along with us, and we're collaborative in our mission to get there. I believe that we can leverage our creativity to solve the most complex of business problems and the most complex of human problems. It goes beyond visuals, it goes beyond words on a page. I believe that we're designing the human experience, and that will be measured by our impact on humanity. And it's interesting because a theme that you all sort of covered off on is the ethics around what we do. All the decisions that we make in our day-to-day work and lives have great impact. And the passion that we have is contagious. We can cause our organizations to be more human-focused. We can cause our government, our nation, to be more human-focused. I want to share with you a story, recently conducted research with people who were recently diagnosed with a health condition. And I spoke with a man who I'll call Jim for our purposes here. Jim was recently diagnosed with heart disease. And before I even asked him how he felt upon receiving this diagnosis, he told me with great intensity about what happened. He told me that he was overwhelmed, confused, and alone. There was no one that he could talk to. He didn't know what he should do first or what to expect. I instantly felt for this man. I felt like I was there with him when the doctor told him he had congestive heart disease. I felt like I was there with him when his mind started racing and he stopped really listening to what the doctor was saying. I wanted the best for Jim, just like I would want for my own father. And I thought to myself, why is it that Jim's alone in the system, left to find the resources and the information, the tools that he needs when we know where they are? How come we can't do better? Basically, emotion matters. Jim's emotion led me to understand that this one moment of transition was crucial and could define the trajectory of his path forward. His ability to properly care for himself would be shaped by his emotional well-being and could result in whether or not he's going to show up in the ER. His emotion disrupted me. It led to a burning desire within me to want to change the situation. A spike in emotional intensity can let us know that there's something we should pay attention to. Something's going wrong. Something needs to be better. Something needs to change. Emotion will tell us where to focus, where we're doing well, and where we need to improve. When we align our life's work with what resonates with us in our core at an emotional level, we'll be able to derive real meaning and value from the work that we're doing. So I'm talking about considering the emotion of the people that we're designing for. What you remember about an experience is what you felt when you were in it. And we're designing to elicit positive experiences and help avoid negative experiences. But in the process of doing that, we're having feelings too. When first I had this research interview with Jim and I started feeling, I was like, what is going on? I'm having all these emotions. What am I going to do with them? Because in business, we're taught to squelch those emotions. It's a very rational, logic-driven business environment where emotions don't have a place. But I started to think about what role emotion can play in the work that we do. I think emotion will provide us the answers. And from a business perspective, emotion says pay attention, but we can back it up from a business perspective. I love Cindy Gallup's quote that shared values plus shared action equals shared profits, both financial and social. It's in our best interest to help Jim, because the more successful he is, the more successful the health organizations involved will be at attaining the outcomes that they seek. It's not idealism. It's not fluffy, happy horseshit. It's good business. So also on the value of design, actually Apple's #1 business principle, article written about this in Fast Company, was empathy, emotion, and empathy for the people we are affecting. And companies that have enacted empathy as part of the way they do business, companies that have made a commitment to design, the Design Management Institute actually scorecarded them and put out this design value index. And the companies who have made and enacted a commitment to design outperform the ones that have not by 228% on the stock market. So again, cluing into what we're feeling and explaining it in business terms and making those connections so that we can be successful. So how can we leverage emotion in our work? I would say absolutely do research. Research is the core of human-centered design, to involve the people who will be affected by the solutions we create in the process of creating them. We're in conference room having these brilliant ideas, not really knowing whether or not they're going to be successful within the context of people's real lives. The research that Sophia did around the world, you could see the excitement in their eyes. She learned things that she could not even assume, not having talked with, sat with, real people. And I'm not talking about focus groups. I'm talking about one-on-one interviews. I'm talking about observation. I'm talking about ethnography. I'm talking about real conversations with people. And there is time for research, and there is money for research. I've gone to a train station in Boston with a wad of $10 bills, and you'd be surprised how much information you can get from that. Is that scientific? No. It's certainly inspirational, though. I can tell you that. I think we also need to remember to allow ourselves to feel, to engage with our empathy, to let it smack us in the face. In life and in business, we can become hardened. We get so used to experiencing the same pain point, that fear, that disappointment, that frustration, that we become hardened to it. But we need to pay attention to that and let it motivate us, let it inspire us to change things and to make things better. So post-research, you see things like personas and archetypes and journey maps. One thing that I'm really excited about is how do we research for emotion? How do we design for emotion? And how do we evaluate emotion? One thing to do is look at somebody's journey and look at the peaks and valleys of their emotional intensity as they flew through that journey, and look at the interplay. Obviously, we're going to want to design to reduce friction points and elicit some level of delight. But to go beyond that and to widen our lens, take a wider view. What's going on in their life? Who else is in their life? What are their life goals? What's going to be most meaningful to them? What's going to be most useful to them? And to reach and stretch and design something that's going to work within the context of their lives. So great things are happening. Many of us, you hear more and more again and again, are looking to live purpose-driven lives. Typically, a life experience and emotion will drive us to that end, and that passion will guide us to exciting new territories. And in business, you're seeing more and more commitment to the customer and focus on empathy. We need to feel more for the customer. It's gonna motivate us. It's gonna inspire us. The maturation of design and the understanding of design within organizations is continuing to get better, but we can do more. And I encourage, actually, all of us, please, to trust those feelings that we have, that you have, to really examine them. Don't rationalize them away. Sit with them. Listen. Listen to that voice inside you. Your heart, your gut, it's trying to tell you something. So listen. And then make an effort to communicate that. There's a quote I love that is, they who hear not the music think the dancer's mad. To me, the emotion is the music. Other people might not feel it, but if you're brave enough, courageous enough to feel it, to work with it, to let it inspire you and motivate you, chances are others will see it too. And we'll make things better for Jim and for people like him. Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt this, but there are speed mentors and mentees in the audience who need to go to Union Square so that we can get you all the great advice and connections that you need. So if you're a speed mentor or a speed mentee, please head to Union Square. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for sticking around. Jeremy, I'm gonna follow your advice and keep it in my pants. But what time is it? What time is it right now? Let's see. Ironically, 4:06. 4:06. Yeah. Kristin and I really debated whether we should take our 10 minutes on stage doing yoga, because we're both yoga fanatics, and I think we know the answer now. We should do yoga, but my colleagues would be mad at me if I didn't represent their passionate work. So I'm going to dig in. I want to say that those of us that don't work in the creative industries, like my father, for instance, often describe people that do as kind of impetuous children who are always rattling our cages and wanting more creative freedom. We want more time, or we want more resources, more crayons to express our vision. But we know, those of us who've worked in the business for any length of time as writers or producers or designers or even with them, know that the big problems usually start when we don't have a cage, when we don't have clear boundaries or clear objectives or not enough time, when we have too many people involved or too many resources. So in this case, we took our 11 minutes very seriously as the confining structure and raised this question, like what could we do with 11 minutes in our organization? Because we all know the nature of any of our businesses is time pressure. That's not a kind of particular new pressure. That's the reason why we have jobs. We have to do things fast. So we took this as a kind of defining condition of our form of engagement with this question of how to raise representation of women within this industry that so many people have spoken about with such passion and insight today. We were also inspired by this recent article in Harvard Business Review, Joan Williams' article on the tech industry and the equally horrible representation of women in that industry. And she points out that a lot of diversity programs get mired in what she calls admiring the problem. And those of you that know me know I come from an academic background before I moved into marketing, or sold out, as my former colleagues say. And I'm very familiar with that notion of being admired, because if you go looking for bias in American life, whether it's race or class or gender, you're going to find it. And you're going to find it in big ways and small ways. You're going to find it in interesting ways, but it doesn't actually always lead to change, as we've been discussing through this entire conference. So she said, we need to do something different than simply examine this question, even though that question is fascinating and uncovers lots of insights into our cultures. And she also pointed out that high-performance cultures, of which many of us are thankfully a part, are often the hardest to change. They're the hardest to change because they think of themselves as meritocracies, as places where just great work rises. I know the young women that work for me often, when I proclaim that I'm a feminist in the traditional sense of the word, I think of it as a civil rights and equal rights issue. They say, well, I don't want to represent myself as a whiner. I don't want to complain. It should be my will. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then that just means men are better? Because if you look around at the top, 90% of these leaders in these high performance cultures are men, and I'm not comfortable with that conclusion. I'm pretty sure the evidence is against it, from what I can see. But even if it were true, I wouldn't be comfortable with the culture it produced. So what we need to do, rather than simply submit to the choices that we're given, because they're not equal choices, nor just admire the problem, is what Joan Williams pointed out, is that we need to create what she calls bias interrupters. We need to create what we do best as creative and technology cultures. We need to do experiments and apply those experiments to our own organizations, and then use that data to enforce our own leadership, which is often male, to look at the data and see the changes that take place. So what we did was, I'm going to see if I'm going to click right. I don't even know. What we needed to do was uncover these patterns of unconscious bias that were in our cultures that were not being examined in our own high-performance culture, because these men looked around and saw these high performers and saw there was no bias. And we needed to come up with a form of interruption that would change that current pattern behavior. And of course, like any creative company, we used our own resources and our own strengths in that regard. We turned to our culture. We have a very diverse culture in terms of domains and disciplines, and we often require people to get together in order to inspire each other across disciplines and also kind of share their positions and care and respect one another. So we wanted to use that. And then we also wanted to use what is in fact our core competency, or at least I'm told at Sapient, which is we're supposed to transform businesses with technology through rapid experimentation. We have to get to market fast. So we wanted to come up with a rapid experiment and apply that to our own organization in order to transform it. And we had to do it by sharing all these diverse perspectives through this process we called connected thinking. So that's the experiment we engaged with, or we started to engage with, and we're of course going to require you to participate as well. But we should all breathe as well, because we don't have time to do yoga. Come on out, Kristin. Yeah, we should do it. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to do this. Oh, okay. Okay. So as Scott was saying, from that, our belief was that 11 minutes and a small commitment can change and ignite a movement. So we really did want to combine this idea of the time that we actually have to devote to making change and the actual change we can make. And I love that there's this theme of experimentation that we've been talking about today, because that's exactly where we were as well. So we wanted to run an experiment. What can we do with 11 minutes? So within our Chicago office, we actually put together a workshop in 11 minutes. Well, it didn't take 11 minutes to put together, but the execution was. It was broken down into 3 stages. So the first stage, we asked for volunteers, both men and women, within our agency, to spend 11 minutes doing some reflection pre-work. And really that was thinking through what that future looks like when we have diverse representation and divergent thinking within your team. And we asked them, really, please don't spend more than 11 minutes on this. We want you to have more focused thinking faster. The second stage, after that pre-work, everyone came together, and we did a sharing activity where people took their thoughts from the pre-work and transformed them into action cards. And again, this was a quick activity, really meant to elicit all that thinking, pull it together, and create what we called sort of the wall of inspiration with the activity cards. And then the third piece was really about driving discussion. And this was a chance for people to really open up, share ideas, be a little vulnerable, be open, and commit to something on that activity wall that they wanted to do that was going to have an immediate impact on their team. So additionally, we wanted to document that process so that we could learn. It is an experiment. We want to learn, we want to iterate, we want to optimize it. So I'd like to share that experience with you.
Increasing diversity in our industry takes action from everyone at every level. But sometimes, all it takes to catalyze change is one person's commitment. It's a great theory, but for this year's 3% conference, we wanted to put it into practice.
So we requested a small group of Sapient people to make an even smaller commitment.
Just 11 minutes of their time. One short exercise to empower individuals to change our industry for good. Beforehand,
we asked the group to think of ways that we as an organization can become more diverse,
and what they as individuals can do to help. We define diversity in 2 ways: valuing diverse perspectives and divergent thinking, and striving to represent diverse identities, backgrounds, and experiences in our offices and leadership. Then the countdown began. Groups had exactly 11 minutes to discuss their ideas and refine possibilities into concrete actions. Small steps they could take to champion diversity in their everyday work. Next, everyone came together to pool their thoughts and build a wall of inspiration. They explored others' ideas and chose the ones that inspired each of them personally to take action. As we exchanged ideas, we discovered that sharing your perspective is the best way to expand your perspective. But having an idea is just the first step to making an impact.
So we requested a commitment from each of them.
One action they could take immediately to grow our diversity and hopefully change the world. When it comes to diversity, our industry has a long way to go with the numbers. We know that change won't happen overnight, but with one short exercise, we learned that 11 minutes can ignite a huge impact.
So as you can see, it was actually, it's fun with experiments, right? You never exactly know how it's going to turn out, but we were very pleasantly surprised, and one of the big reasons was that, the overwhelming response we got back from the volunteers was just how excited they were that we were actually having this conversation. And really, they were just waiting for someone, a group of people, to start the dialogue. And that was one of the biggest takeaways we had, and just how passionate people were about the experience. I think another takeaway was that, the combination of that self-reflection time and then coming together I think, really create a combination where people felt like they had something to contribute, and it allowed them to, kind of go into that vulnerable space, but have a really open and authentic conversation, and really elicit emotion. Oh, she's gone, but and really elicit that emotion, because it is a very emotional topic. So I'm gonna get the sign. So again, experimentation. This is what we do. So we apply it to our own selves. So iterating, optimizing, scaling. So some things we're doing in these next steps. So actually the group requested that we do an 11-minute checkup on the commitment. So we're going to get the group back together and see how everybody is doing and support one another in their commitment. We also have taken that wall of inspiration that you saw, and we've actually left it up in our public spaces, not only to help from a commitment and checking up on one another's commitments, but inspiring other folks in our office so we can all rally around it and discuss the impact. And then we're going to keep the experiment going. So, the materials that we used, the video that you saw, we're going to continue to iterate on it and basically do it with more folks, more often, and more offices. Do you have something you want to say?
All I want to say is I told my colleagues I would make this appeal to all the men in the audience. I know the appeal's been made earlier, that it has had a big impact to enlist men in this conversation, particularly with the very disrepresentation that we're seeing represented at the higher ranks. We need to get senior management involved in this question and take it seriously as a change action for it to move from theory to practice.
Absolutely, but so it doesn't end here. These workshop materials are available to you as well, so that you can take this again as sort of initial input, experiment in your own organization, and optimize to what makes sense for you. But we really encourage you to just do something, get it started. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you can even just start with 11 minutes. So take the challenge. Thanks.